Good afternoon, Facebook. This is Stephen, and I'm joined today by Ali Steed. Good afternoon, Ali.
Hi there, Stephen. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And today is broadcast on behalf of... Got it now. And just adjust the screen. Expat Lifeplan. Now, first of all, to start off with, could you explain a little bit about Expat Lifeplan, please, Ali?
Yeah, sure. So Expat Lifeplan is a company we started last year. What we're aiming to do is to offer financial and legal services assistance to expats worldwide. We're concentrating sort of primarily at the moment in Europe, sort of Spain, France, Portugal. But what we are very sort of strong about is that expats currently don't get a good deal of genuine information and genuine help from a lot of the advisors out there, which we're very unhappy about. We want to offer instead trustworthy, genuine advice that is helping the client more than it's helping the advisor. That's the aim of the business.
Right, so it's basically it's the customer that counts.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Right. And who is involved in Expat Lifeplan?
So I'm the sort of face of Expat Lifeplan, as it were. I was the Deputy Personal Finance Editor for The Telegraph for a lot of years, for about 7 years I was there. And I also, as part of that job, was writing as the Personal Finance Editor for the offshore paper, The Weekly Telegraph, which sadly was stopped last year. But even after I went freelance quite a while ago, I still continued to write in the expat space. So I've been writing on expat finance now for about 20 years. The two people I'm working with who are sort of, they're the kind of mechanics, if you like, behind the content and the front-facing stuff, are Ian Floyd and Steve Naylor. Now, Ian and Steve have both got a very good track record, a very strong pedigree in the UK. They set up something called My Home Move, which is the largest UK legal services business in the UK now. And they also set up a company called Profile Financial, which is the UK's largest mass market pensions advisory service as well. And so what we're hoping to do is to take that sort of expertise in the sort of technical and legal and financial area, combined with my expertise in expat finance, and actually then offer a very good sort of offering to expats around the world.
Wonderful. Now, we have a topic each week, and today's topic is international wills.
Yeah.
And a series of questions about those, because most people need to know more about the topic, especially given we might come on to the EU at another point. But today, the first question is, why do expats need a will?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. A lot of people actually die intestate, which is without a will. Around 2/3 of people in the UK don't actually have a will at all. Now, everyone should have a will, first of all. It's not just an expat thing. But the importance, especially for expats, is because very often they will have assets in more than one country. So you might, for example, have a house in the UK and a property in Spain, or vice versa. That the kind of information that they need is much more in depth, because when you leave your estate to your beneficiaries, and obviously your executors have to unpick the will and everything that's left behind. If you haven't actually done the groundwork for them by creating an international will, which covers more than one country, potentially you will find that the assets in Spain might be treated very differently to the assets in the UK, even though you as an expat think you've got a UK will, so you don't need to worry about it. It's all covered under that. But the reality is very different because of the different legal jurisdictions for different countries and how they interact.
And preparing an will in advance is important, because you're leaving your relatives behind, and you want them to it's in an emotional time. You want things to be as straightforward as possible. And there are, my question is, what additional complications are there for the executors who are dealing with the will of an expat?
Well, the really simple sort of basic ones are things like language barriers. If you have, say your children are dealing with your will, and you happen to die in Spain, let's say, your children may have no knowledge of Spanish whatsoever. They may have no contact with any of the people that you've had contact with while you've actually been living or working there. And what essentially will happen is they will end up having to travel to Spain for a start, and then try and start unpicking all of the paperwork, the things as simple as sorting out your electricity company, sorting out where your pet might need rehoming, those kind of things that are really very, very fundamental, but actually very important as part of the dealing with an estate. Because of the fact that expats are resident very often in a different country, they may obviously have a domicile in the UK. I don't really want to get too much into that. I'm sure expats generally know that. But where you're taxed on your assets will very much depend on your residence and your domicile. And so having a will literally based that's just in one country does create additional complications for anyone dealing with the estate as an executor, because it might be that while part of your estate is dealt with and can be divvied up the way that you actually have intended, another part of it may not be able to be partitioned the way that you had anticipated, because the rules simply work differently. So it's a matter of very sort of simple, the point of not being in the same country as the person who died. That's the most fundamental. There's clearly very often a language barrier, but more importantly and more difficultly, is that the impact of actually dealing with the administration just in the UK is very, very hard, especially when it's such an emotional time. Dealing with that across borders adds an exponential increase in that difficulty.
Indeed. And obviously, the next question is, I think you've partly covered this, but how can you be sure a will in one European country will be effective in another?
Well, this is one of the difficult things, particularly with Brexit on the horizon as well. There are certain laws under EU legislation which allow you to designate where a will is valid. So, for example, if you have a UK will, you may want to have that valid in France. If you have a French will, you may want to have it valid in the UK. You can designate which will be valid. But the easiest and the most sort of straightforward way is to ensure that you have an international will which will cover the various areas that you have assets. And if you choose to do it this way, it's very sensible as well to have a sort of a translation of your will. So if you're in France, you need a French translation. Obviously, if you're in Spain, you need a Spanish translation, and that actually helps to speed up the administration process once you have died, and obviously the executors are starting to take care of things for you.
So again, it's the advanced planning which is key, which makes it not easier, but makes things go. Now, in terms of, we've been talking about international wills, and this is Expat Lifeplan Live. And could you talk the next topic, which is an international will prepared for you?
Yeah, well, we are doing an offer at the moment, which is that we will help expats prepare an international will, which will be reviewed, obviously, once we know what the Brexit situation is, to make sure that it still complies with all of the relevant legislation, for €165 at the moment. We've got a form on the website. If people are interested, they can just send us a note and let us know that they're interested. We're basically offering this because even though people may have a will in the UK, it may not be sufficient for their assets overseas as well. And the one thing that I would stress here is that a lot of people think that wills and things like inheritance tax particularly don't apply to them because they don't have enough assets. Now, particularly if you own a property in the UK, the inheritance tax bans have been static for such a long time now that you actually do very often fall into the inheritance tax bracket without realising it. The current nil rate band is 325,000. Now, if you have more than that in your estate, and obviously that includes property, it includes assets like vehicles, if you have paintings or any kind of collections even that would be valuable. All of that actually counts towards that nil rate band. If you happen to have more than that, you will potentially be paying 40% tax for the first time after you die, which for a lot of people is an insult to injury. But it's something that with good planning and good preparation, you can generally work to avoid. You don't need to you don't have to pay that if you actually sort of work within the rules and make sure that you're doing everything the right way under the legislation as it stands. So those are the main reasons for people actually needing to look at this. Any additional life changes, if you have children, you have grandchildren, you get married, you get divorced, any of those kind of things, you come into a lot of money because you've had an inheritance. All of those things really, it's very important then to readdress your will, to ensure that what you currently have is actually what you want to be your legacy, because over time things change. And it may be, for example, that if you've been married more than once, your will, obviously it gives everything to your previous wife or your previous husband, which for most people is the worst thing in the world. So there's it's a very, very important thing to keep on top of.
Right, and so that's the link is in the broadcast below. If you click that link, and how many are available at that special price?
We're offering 100 at that price, 100. And so it's a limited offer, but hopefully it's something that people will find useful.
So this has been the first Expat Lifeplan live show on Facebook. To anybody who's watched, thank you, and look out for more shows from Expat Lifeplan. Ali, would you like to close the show and then we'll move on?
Yeah, sure. No, thanks for anyone who's been watching. And obviously, if you need any more information about wills or any other aspects of sort of legal or financial services for an expat, then please do get in touch. You can come to the main website address, and our email address, if you want to just get in touch about anything, is info@expatlifeplan.com.
Well, excellent. So anybody who's watched, thank you, and take care, and we'll see you again soon. Ali, it's a wrap.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye.